Well, Peter, when you mention things like investing in foreign countries, you're talking to a pretty stodgy economy here. Detroit, I can tell you this as a kid: if you made the mistake of driving a foreign car, to school, you could count on being keyed or have your car scratched with a can opener. But I think what's happening in the Detroit marketplace is they're realizing that many of the big four and now the big three, they were investing in the late 70s hundreds of millions of dollars in Mexico, overseas in China, and in the Detroit area. I talk to people and they seem like they've been tricked, they've been fooled, where these companies have gone from American companies to multinational companies. Is that really the primary answer that you have for people? Is that they have to, I don't know, maybe take a somewhat non-patriotic approach to investment?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a question of patriotism. I don't think it's patriotic to go broke. I don't think it's patriotic to lose your money. I think it's patriotic to try to preserve your money, especially so it puts you in a stronger position to help rebuild the country once we get the monetary policy and the fiscal policy right. Because eventually we are going to start doing it right, and unless we all want to start working for foreigners, we better hope that there are some Americans that didn't go bankrupt, between now and then. And so the way to preserve your wealth is to put it where it'll be safe and where it will grow, which unfortunately right now is out of the country. But what we need to do as Americans is work to change the policies that are undermining investment opportunities in this country and that are forcing people like myself to send their money and advise their clients to send their money abroad. We need to be a magnet for capital. We want to make it so we have not only Americans investing here, but foreigners investing here. That's what we need, because we're short on investment capital. If we're going to produce the jobs of the future, we need capital today to do that.
For a person that loves their country, loves their state, loves their city, but doesn't necessarily aren't really enamored with the politicians that are making policies, where can an average guy today go to start to begin to rebuild themselves? What would you advise a Detroiter to do who has a little bit of money?
Certainly, they can contact my firm. I mean, my firm specializes in, because of my outlook. That's why my firm specializes in these strategies, because these are the strategies that I'm implementing myself, and so I'm helping my clients do it. But, we work with individual investors at Euro Pacific Capital. We have individual brokerage accounts and managed accounts. I have a mutual fund, and we can help people, protect themselves. We sell physical precious metals, gold and silver. So I can help people who understand the problem. And certainly you can read about it in my book. Crash Proof 2.0 is, available now. You can read, and get an idea of my philosophy. And I'm not the only firm. And there's certainly you can try to contact other firms and try to implement these strategies. I think it's most effective and easiest if you work with my brokers, because that's all we're doing. I mean, everybody we're working with has these objectives. That's why they're coming to my firm. But you can get information on my firm, on my website. It's Europac.net, EUROPAC.net, Europac.net. Or you can call up and talk to a broker. 800-727-7922 is the toll-free number. It's 800-727-7922. And just talk to a broker about how to open up an account and what the services are that we offer.
Well, Peter, I like the fact that you also mentioned that you're open to other, people going to other brokers. I'm part of a financial team here. There's 5 of us that appear Monday through Friday. And I was wondering, and I think it's reasonable to say that it might be a good idea for people who are excited about your thought process, and like you said, kind of your mantra, is to maybe go to the financial advisors that they use here on the station and run by some of the things that you said. And I'm assuming that they would be able to talk to your firm, and maybe there could be some cooperative efforts. I'm not sure, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, some financial advisors are open to it. I know a lot of my clients tell me that they've talked to some of their advisors, and they've been like Dave Ramsey. They've told them, oh, why would you want to do that? Oh, why would you want to sell these? Or oh, that's ridiculous. And so sometimes it's difficult to try to convince the guy who's advising you of what you want to do. So it's a lot easier to work with a firm that is not going to think you're crazy for what you want to do.
Right.
But to the extent that you have an advisor that's on this page, that understands this, and maybe they're in a position to help you.
With respect to gold, let's focus on gold just a little bit. I'm going to tell you this much. I've listened to some of the statistics that people use to justify or to negate the opportunity to invest in gold. Now, I've heard Dave Ramsey say that gold never does much more than 4% and historically is a bad investment. Now, I can tell you this much. With gold being released from the gold standard in 1971, where the American military and American government fixed gold at $30 an ounce, I don't think it's fair to analyze the performance of gold when from 1801 to 1971 it was fixed right around $30. We really have to...
you can look at all these various reference points. Usually when I hear people talking about how gold is a lousy investment, and
right.
I don't even look at it as an investment. I look at it as money. But when people talk about it, a lot of times they point to 1980 and they say, well, if you'd have bought gold in 1980 at 850, you have a lousy return. Well, that was the peak of a huge move up in gold. In 1970, it was $35 an ounce. So if you bought it in 1970 at $35 an ounce, when the Dow was around 1,000, you certainly did better than people who stayed in stocks, because in 1980, the Dow was at 800 and gold was at 800. So gold had gone up dramatically and the stock market had gone down. So there are certainly periods of time where gold dramatically outperforms stocks, and there are periods of time where stocks dramatically outperform gold. The key is to identify in advance when those periods start and end and where you are. Because if you make the wrong choice, you can lose a lot of money. People who were in stocks in the 1970s did terrible. People who were in gold did great. People who were in gold did terrible in the 1980s and the 1990s, but people who were in stocks did great. But so far, the last decade, the decade that we just finished, people who were in stocks did lousy, and people who were in gold did phenomenal. Gold was under $300 an ounce when the last decade began, and when it ended, it was over 1,000. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks actually went down. The S&P was down about 20% for the decade. Now, the question is this decade going to be another decade where you're better off owning gold, or is it going to be a decade where you're better off owning stocks? If you understand the dynamics involved, I think hands down you want to be in gold. You still have a government where interest rates are at zero. They're flooding the world with dollars. We have a massive budget deficit. We have an economy that's completely malinvested, and the government's trying to reflate asset bubbles. This is an environment that is highly conducive to gold. Meantime, if you look at valuations, when the big bull market in stocks began in 1980, the Dow was very cheap. The Dow was trading at less than book value. I think the PE on the Dow was single digits, and I think you got a 7 or 8% dividend yield. So stocks had real value. Today, stocks are very expensive. The dividend yield is minute. The PEs are high, and the U.S. economy is in serious trouble. I mean, this is not a time to be buying stocks. I think it still favors gold. And, one thing that people always forget when they're comparing gold to stocks is that stocks are actually investments that can produce a return. Gold is money. Gold is just buried in the ground. What you want to compare gold to is paper money. You want to find out what money is better. Gold, which is a money that the market creates, right? The market made gold money. Gold is a free market's money. Or government money, government fiat, which is paper. And if you compare paper to gold, it's hands down. I mean, if somebody buried $100, in the ground 100 years ago, it's worth $3 or $4 today. But in purchasing power relative to what it was. But if you buried the gold, you can still buy the same amount of goods that you could buy 100 years ago. There has been no loss of value. There's only loss of value in the government money. But in real money, it holds its value. So in that respect, anybody who's like Dave Ramsey, who's putting his cash in the bank, they should be putting gold, in their safety deposit boxes, because that's much safer than having U.S. currency in an interest-bearing account where the interest is zero.
If anyone wants to Google Schiff was right, they're going to have an opportunity to see how you pretty much in the face of mockery and criticism, we're on these major TV shows. And I've noticed one thing about it. You don't get too excited about too much. You don't seem to get ruffled too much. It almost seems, well, I would say it's true, that you approach investment just like a math problem. You add it up, you look on both sides of the equation, and you make a statement. So I'm going to say